Hey, what's going on, everyone? This is Mitch. Good Wednesday morning to you all. Hope you guys are feeling well out there, having a great start to your day. I understand probably a lot of folks are having a slow start to their day with it being the morning after the 4th of July, and it just happened to being on a Tuesday out of all the days, a Tuesday. I guess a Monday could have technically been worse, but I don't know. I've always been a big believer that, we should get 2 days off with the 4th of July. The 4th of July and then the day after the 4th of July, especially if it falls on a weekday. I know for me and my family, I mean, we're not going to stay up till 10 or 11 o'clock when we have to turn around and go to work the next day to watch fireworks. I barely can make it to 8:30 these days. This time of the year, me and my family are going to sleep before the sun even sets. We didn't last night. We stayed up a little later watching fireworks. But that's just how me and my family are. But I understand probably a lot of people, even if they didn't shoot fireworks, they got animals, dogs. Dogs probably kept them up all night. I know my two dogs were anxious pretty late into the evening, and I definitely didn't get as much sleep as I typically do. But regardless of all that, I hope you guys did enjoy your day yesterday, enjoyed the festivities, celebrating America, and had yourselves a very great day, and the weather didn't affect y'all too much out there. But that's what we're here to do. We're here to talk about the weather for today, the day after the 4th of July, July 5th, which to me always is the gateway to the second half of summer. I really start zoning in on fall, things like that, even though we still got a good bit of time before we work our way to that period. But to me, it's always a downhill slope from here. But with that being said, we got some severe weather to talk about. Nothing too crazy I don't think is going to happen today, but we do have a lot of areas that are going to be under the gun for some strong to severe storms. We'll break that down for you folks. Talk about how some areas of the country are much below average this morning, and we'll actually have a beautiful, almost fall-like or spring-like day today across the northern plains. So with that being said, if you folks have not subscribed, certainly consider doing that. Like the video if you like it. You guys got anything that I can pray about? I pray over, as always. Please put those in the comments below so I can pray over it and so others can do so too. And I appreciate the great start to July. I've had, I believe, 8 videos in a row now with over 10,000 views, so that's pretty huge for this time of the year. So just a continued thank you for the amazing support. We take a look at what's going on out there. Cold front digging across literally right in the middle of the country, with the upper trough with that associated surface front. And then along this frontal boundary to the north and south, you got showers and storms. And you had that ongoing this morning in portions of Kansas and Oklahoma. And then just some general areas of showers and storms right into here in eastern Tennessee. And then we have a little bit of a different air mass up in the northeast that will pretty much keep y'all more calm today, maybe compared to yesterday, especially southern New England, but you guys could certainly deal with a little bit of weather. We'll talk about that here in a second. And then I'm watching a plume of moisture. It almost looks like it's outflow boundary driven here in the western Gulf of Mexico. I think that this is going to give areas of Louisiana and extreme southeast areas like around Houston and points east and north a lot of widespread rains today, and we'll talk about that. But we take a look at what actually is falling per radar, and here's this area of somewhat organized storms. We'll see if this refires as it continues to kind of trail off into northern areas of Oklahoma, Arkansas, and eventually into southwest Missouri. But we got a good decent little cluster of storms. Nothing severe here in southern Kansas for sure. And we'll definitely watch out Tulsa here in the next few hours. We'll see how this behaves, but this is ongoing right now in areas of the middle of the country. Move a little bit further north, have some heavier rain blasting through areas of northeast Iowa, central Wisconsin, and then some folks are waking up to some very rainy conditions here in the UP of Michigan. Let me know what you guys are seeing up there. Steven, I know you're a loyal viewer, especially in the morning videos. Let me know what you guys are seeing. Definitely this would be much needed rain falling in these regions of the country. And then you go down here, a cluster of showers and even heavy rain, even maybe a rumble of thunder here in eastern Tennessee. And we got some storms off the coastline of the Carolinas. And then this is the area I'm watching a little bit later today. See this cluster of storms? You always got to watch these. Sometimes they can suddenly develop some kind of tropical characteristics. We're not expecting that with this, but definitely watching this as it pushes further north, maybe into eastern Texas and certainly Louisiana later today. Storm Prediction Center outlook, we have a slight risk which extends all the way from Denver, points south, all the way down to the panhandle of Oklahoma and Texas, all the way across the northern half of Oklahoma, southern half of Kansas, northern half of Arkansas, extreme western areas of Tennessee, a large chunk of central and southern Missouri, all the way through the heart of Illinois, all the way up almost to Milwaukee, Wisconsin. So, a pretty large area could be under the gun for some severe weather, but that doesn't mean everybody in this risk area is going to see anything. You guys know that. But you do have the marginal risk that does extend through the deep south into the Carolinas. Another day, kind of like yesterday, where you're going to have isolated to scattered strong to severe storms throughout the area. This is more of just a typical flow, summer flow out here for these regions. Nothing uncharacteristic or just rare or uncommon really here in the deep south. It really isn't. Now this big time, almost lost my mouse over here. Now this big time cold front digging through the middle of the country, this is somewhat more so uncommon, but nothing super unusual or anything like that. But definitely a risk. Tornado threat relatively low, except if you're around in the central to southern high plains here in Colorado, New Mexico, and the panhandle of Texas and Oklahoma. You do have that 2% risk of a tornado within 25 miles in a given location. But just a reminder, guys, that even if you're not under any percent chance of a tornado, that doesn't mean there's a zero chance. We had a pretty photogenic funnel cloud. It almost looked like a tornado in and around the Myrtle Beach area yesterday. And it was pretty wild. We had a pretty stout looking I can't think this morning, but a water spout off the coast of Myrtle Beach too. That almost looked like a stovepipe tornado out in the ocean. So with that being said, guys, even on the days where there's a very, very low, almost non-existent chance of a tornado, it's never non-existent. Wind threat, 15% risk of winds exceeding that 50 knots or higher. That's 55 to 60 miles per hour. So you can get some damaging winds out here. Hail threat. Kind of cuts off here. They're thinking the best hail chances will be in this region right in here, where you do have that 15% risk of hail exceeding 1 inch in diameter or larger. We could get, a good bit of rain, which is kind of already falling this morning in areas of Oklahoma and Kansas, but another round of rain will develop potentially early this afternoon, and then a bigger line of storms maybe will develop here in maybe western Kansas and Oklahoma, and then sweep through this area again. And we could potentially get a risk for flash flooding. In the yellow, that's at least a 15% risk of flash flood guidance being met. And just your pop-up showers and storms could lead to flooding in these regions of the Carolinas and eastern Tennessee. Watches and warnings, some dense fog advisories in Wyoming right now, southeast Wyoming. Even got some of those in southern areas of southern New England. You even have some heat advisories in a few counties in Vermont and extreme northern New York State. So, heat's going to be building today. Almost pretty much the entire Big Bend area and peninsula of Florida do have heat advisories today. Areas of southeast Oklahoma also, and extreme southern Texas. So, very warm, very uncomfortable for you folks in Florida who decide to vacation in July in Florida. In the middle of summer. That is to me and my family, we have not had the chance to go to Disney World or Universal Studios yet. We're going to wait a couple more years and when the money's right, but when we do go, it's not going to be in the middle of summer, I'll tell you that. Now that's a place that I'm going to avoid in the middle of summer, especially the theme parks. It's the same thing with locally going to any kind of theme parks here in the southeast, like Carowinds. You never want to go really smack dab on the middle of a weekend in the middle of summer, or you're just wasting money, in my opinion. But anyways, we're not going to get into that. But the southeast today, it's going to be tough. It's going to be tough figuring out if your exact area is going to get a shower or storm. It's kind of one of those days where if you look on your weather app, there's a 30 to 40% chance of showers and storms, which you're thinking, okay, that's not a very high chance. And it isn't. But you never know, 3 to 6, 7 p.m. where a big, strong to severe storms can pop up right on top of you and get this in motion here. I would say you got a solid chance for some showers and storms from Houston all the way to Lake Charles, all the way to New Orleans down here. There's going to be a solid area, a potentially slow-moving storms, and I'm surprised there's not a flooding risk down here. I really am. There might be one introduced later in the outlooks, but if you're in these regions right here, Louisiana, down along the southern coastline of the Gulf Coast, definitely could see some heavier rains. We'll talk about this feature right here a little bit later in the video, but as you can tell, scattered, isolated, strong to severe storms. And then Florida, another day where you're going to heat up fast, just like you always do this time of the year, and then showers and storms will get going around lunchtime and after. These could produce a lot of rain, kind of bounce back and forth, outflow boundary driven, and then by the time you get into the evening hours, they will diminish, and you're just left over with extremely humid conditions and uncomfortable conditions. But the Deep South, a closer look at what could evolve today. We're getting into about the lunchtime, 1 p.m. time frame. And I mean, you got a good bit of storm activity already developing along extreme southern Louisiana, even extreme southern and the coastal regions of Mississippi, Alabama, and the western panhandle of Florida. And then you get to about 3, 4, 5 p.m. And these storms could definitely breach strong to severe limits and drop a whole lot of rain. I mean, this is the time of the year down here where it's very humid. What we call the precipitation values are very high. So any storms, even just downpours that develop, are going to be tropical in nature, which means they will drop a lot of rain very quickly. So that's why I'm kind of surprised we don't have any kind of flooding risk down here. But I would be aware of a flooding risk. But Louisiana, extreme southern Louisiana and Mississippi and the panhandle of Florida, you guys definitely have a higher chance of the shower and storm activity than maybe further north. But the showers and storms, well, the storms that do develop here in northern areas of the Deep South, like northern Mississippi, Alabama, Georgia, these will have a higher chance that will become severe in these regions. So we'll watch for this. We'll even look at the FV3 model and how it unfolds this today. And I mean, it shows the same general idea. You'll back this up here. I will tell you, it does like more activity further north in the afternoon hours than the HRRR model. It shows a lot of storm action from Little Rock down the Jackson, down the Meridian, all across Alabama, even Georgia, very scattered about. And it does still also show that storm activity along the Gulf coastline, and it really consolidates in the further southern portions of all these regions. And that's why I'm not worried or concerned, but I would say there's a risk of flash flooding down here. So definitely be aware of this when we get into the evening hours. And then, all these showers and storms kind of lose some steam with the loss of daytime heating. But I mean, everybody in this area that you're seeing has that chance, okay? But the National Weather Service does symbolize the fact that these southern regions down here have that higher chance to see more rain. Areas, there's little splotches of areas that are over an inch of rain, and I do think that is likely going to happen. Somebody's going to get an inch or two of rain from one of these downpours, and I'd say that would favor along the bayou, Baton Rouge, New Orleans, even up to Lake Charles, Gulfport, Mobile, Alabama, all the way to potentially even Tallahassee, but western areas of Florida for sure. So a lot of rain could fall in these areas, especially the southern portions. Now, we speak on the Carolinas. We get into, the 2, 3, 4 p.m. time frame. You're already getting these pop-up, stronger cells right in here in the eastern Carolinas. I would say the higher chance of showers and storms are in the eastern Carolinas, the PD of North Carolina, Sandhills of North Carolina, and then the coastal kind of plains of North Carolina, if you will. But, you're certainly going to get a chance also. It's kind of been one of those deals where Augusta to Columbia to Charlotte has kind of been getting gypped from any kind of storm activity. It seems like every day over the last several days, you've had a really strong storm in and around the Hendersonville area, Asheville area, and then it's been very active in the eastern Carolinas. But right in the middle, like through the Piedmont and to the Midlands of South Carolina, it's been pretty quiet over the last several days. Even though you've had even a risk of severe storms over the last few days, a lot of people have been missing, which was good yesterday because a lot of people, doing fireworks and things like that. But today, it might end up being another day like this. As you can tell, most of the activity is confined to the eastern Carolinas. It's around 5, 6, 7 p.m. Some of these could be severe, producing some hail. Even a brief tornado is possible. And then the damaging wind chances. But, you look back here, the higher elevations, you got another area of kind of consolidated shower and storm activity. Will eventually some of this make their way into the Midlands, the Piedmont, where other areas get impacted? It's possible, but it really likes this area of the eastern Carolinas, Florence, maybe down to Orangeburg, Charleston, Myrtle Beach, so Wilmington, all the way up through the Outer Banks. So if you're vacationing, certainly another risk, especially like we saw around Myrtle Beach the last couple of days. Certainly another risk of some strong to severe storms is on the table today. We look at that FV3 model for this region, and it does show a lot more widespread activity across the central areas of the Carolinas and even Georgia. You go down to Georgia, it looks very active by the time you get into that 3 to 5 p.m. range. And I can tell you, the FV3 model definitely hits North Carolina hard later this evening, where you have showers and storms from Charlotte all the way to the coastline of North Carolina. I think Virginia, it's a lot more cut off. You're not going to see as much action. But South Carolina, North Carolina, Georgia, we already talked about the Deep South, certainly all stand about an equal chance to see some storms today. The Northeast, pretty quiet. We get into the afternoon hours, not a whole lot going on. You could get some pop-up showers, maybe even a storm in eastern areas of New York State. This could eventually drift into southern sections of Vermont. It's quite possible, even a downpour along the Finger Lakes region. It's definitely possible. Some showers, maybe a storm in the down east areas of Maine, but relatively speaking, things are pretty quiet. I would say over there in Michigan, and you can get some downpours in Ohio too, even PA, even West Virginia. But they are going to be extremely isolated. If you're looking for rain and you get a pop-up downpour right on top of you in this region, consider yourself very lucky. Maybe play the lottery or something tonight. But some storms are possible, and we'll talk about this, for you folks in the Great Lakes region. But definitely a showery kind of downpour kind of night here for Michigan for sure, as basically a piece of energy flies through from areas in the middle of the country. The South Central U.S., much more active period compared to the rest of the country. I think we have to watch what happens with that area of storms that we just showed you in Kansas and Oklahoma. Does this rematerialize as it gets into Missouri, Arkansas? It is quite possible. As you can tell right here in this region, this is kind of the rebirth, if you will, of what's going on here in Kansas and Oklahoma. We'll zoom into this area here in a second. But like I said, if you're vacationing along the Texas coastline, I think it could get quite stormy in any given area later this afternoon and this evening. So be aware of this. As you get into the afternoon hours, we could get some storm activity here in this area of eastern and southeastern Texas right in here, like maybe as far west as the Austin area, as far north as just south of the Dallas-Fort Worth region. Any town and community in this area could get a downpour or storm. It's quite possible here. But let's go on and zoom into these individual regions up here, because this is where our highest chance of severe weather will be. I will mention though, because I don't have a panel pulled up. Colorado, do you see these little cells right in here? Let's back it up a little bit. As early as 5 to 6 p.m., some individual supercells can get going in southeast Colorado, extreme northeast areas of New Mexico, and even into the panhandle of western Oklahoma and Texas. So I would really watch out for these cells. If anything's going to produce tornadoes today, the highest chance goes right here. You see these little individual cells? If you're in any kind of towns and communities in this region, be aware. And then they grow up scale and start to impact the panhandle of Oklahoma and Texas with some severe storms. So let's zoom into Oklahoma and this region right in here. We'll start off this morning. The rest of that convection will trail off into the easternly states here, and then we make our way into the 5, 6, 7 p.m. time frame. Some big storms could fire up well south or just south of Wichita, Kansas. Some big storms are possible just well north of, basically between Wichita and Oklahoma. I think that these storms will really get going around 5, 6, 7 p.m. They can immediately start producing hail, some damaging winds, even a brief tornado threat. But even though I think the tornado threat will be the biggest just west of this cluster of storms. And then we have to watch how this evolves. This area continues to trail off, and then another area begins to develop. But these storms could be packing a punch too here in southeast Kansas, northeast Oklahoma. Watch out Tulsa. These eventually will, make their way into just after midnight, start affecting areas like Fayetteville. This point is around midnight, 1 a.m. But then you got another cluster of storms developing. It's affecting like Dodge City. This is getting closer to areas like Woodward, Oklahoma. And I would say this is more so what the slight risk could be driven off of right here. Does this develop into more of a hefty line of storms that, blast through the panhandle of Oklahoma, Texas, late evening, and then to the overnight hours? Notice we're at about, this says 3 a.m., but this is in Eastern time. This is about 2 a.m. in the morning tonight in Oklahoma. It could be a very loud night. So, just because the sun goes down, you think the severe weather threat's over in southern Kansas and Oklahoma, please be careful, as a line of storms could sweep through Oklahoma City, up to Tulsa, and everybody in between and outside could be impacted by this line of storms. And then we're getting into about 7 a.m. in the morning, and you could be waking up to some big storms again. But compared to the area that you're seeing this morning, this could be a little bit further southeast, but waking up to maybe a severe line of storms in Oklahoma. But there'll be probably at least 2 rounds of storms. 3 if you're including the one right now. So 3 chances to see strong to severe storms a day in this region. So please be careful. Let's move a little bit further east and northeast. And same kind of deal, but what's left over of this energy, we'll see if this sparks this energy right here. So this is around lunchtime. And St. Louis, in and around the St. Louis area, this could develop even as far west as Columbia, the Jefferson City area. But I would say, St. Louis, you guys have had some big storms around this area lately. Up to Quincy, St. Louis, all the way potentially down to the Boot Hill, Missouri. These storms begin to get vigorous, I would say, 2 to 3 p.m. this afternoon, based off the HRRR model. And they continue to potentially strengthen. I don't think they'll strengthen too much. But I would say if you're, in far eastern Missouri into western areas of Illinois today, even all the way up into southern sections of Wisconsin, you could have a line of storms that develops and sweeps across these regions later today. These eventually get into Bloomington, Champaign, Springfield, Illinois, probably late afternoon, early evening time frame. And then they will try to make their way all the way into western Kentucky as we get into the evening time frame, the Boot Hill, Missouri, northeast Arkansas, western Tennessee, where you guys do have a slight risk. And then I think as we begin to make our way into the late evening hours, getting close to midnight, I think that these start to lose some steam as they enter Indiana. But between now and then, I don't think much is going to happen in Indiana, western Kentucky. I think that if any activity does become severe, it'll be later in the evening for these regions for sure. You look at the FV3 model for this region, and you take this through, and it likes the idea, similar idea. And I didn't show it for the last panel in Oklahoma because both models kind of agree in for the most part, but shows the same kind of idea. You got this area of storms developing, but it does show more activity further south into Arkansas earlier in the period than maybe the HRRR model does. But I will tell you, the FV3 model has some pretty intense storms moving through the Chicago area around 6, 7, 8, 9 p.m., give or take an hour. I know that's a broad time period, but I would watch out. Right around sunset in the Chicago region, you guys, based off this model, could potentially see some big storms. Which model will win? I would say combine a chance of both. That's why the Storm Prediction Center has such a broad, slight region. It's because there's just so many evolutions of how this can unfold. But that's why it's important to have a radar. I know I promote that a lot. I promote it almost like I get money. I make money to promote it, but I don't make money. I just genuinely want you guys to watch out and stay aware. But broader look at the north central U.S. And like I said, some storms could develop along the Green Bay area. Some more storms could fire here in the eastern UP of Michigan. And then these storms could make their way across Lake Michigan and begin to affect areas of northern Michigan later today. Could turn into just more of a steady, light to moderate, maybe at times heavy rain in the eastern UP. Later this evening, could have a rainy evening for sure. And then this continues to make its way into Michigan, where I mentioned in the northeast time frame that you guys could see some rain overnight in Michigan, mainly overnight, and then by the time you're waking up tomorrow morning, could still be dealing with some rain in northern Michigan. But everybody else, pretty quiet, almost like a fall-type air mass. Temperatures only in the 60s and 70s in the north central and northern plains. And speaking of temperatures, let's go on and update this. These are temperatures right now in this region. you're waking up to the 40s in central areas and eastern areas of South Dakota, 50s in western Nebraska, 40s and 50s for all of North Dakota. Even in certain areas of western North Dakota, eastern Montana, you're waking up to the upper 30s. So chilly conditions. I mean, it's chilly. It's a little nip in the air all the way down to northeast Colorado. Certainly Wyoming, Montana. Definitely just a middle of the summer, pretty strong cold front. So much cooler temperatures in this area. If you like cooler temperatures this time of the year, I'm sure you're enjoying this. So, the HRRR model run for today, it's going to be quiet. I mean, with the cold front that's moved through, really stabilized conditions, you could get some chillier showers potentially for July standards to get going here in northern and northwest sections of Nebraska. It's quite possible. And then, of course, we're going to watch these supercells here that I mentioned earlier that will likely try to produce a photogenic tornado. Let's hope nothing affects any small towns and communities out here. But the rest of the Rockies, pretty quiet. Western U.S., pretty quiet. There's just not a whole lot going on. Areas like Washington State, eastern, western sections of Washington State and Oregon, where it can get quite rainy. Have not seen a lot of rain lately. So, we take it all the way through tomorrow morning and not a whole lot going on. So, temperatures for today, it'll warm quickly into the 90s in the Carolinas, the southeast, all the way up into Virginia before storms will begin to develop here. Very hot, very warm. It's still not comparable to what y'all saw over the last couple weeks, but it's still very uncomfortable. I mean, highs into the 90s, heat indices well into the 100s. But much cooler temperatures once you get up here. Okay, 60s and 70s only for highs behind this cold front. The atmosphere stabilizes and you just get nice, beautiful summer kind of weather. 70s and 80s up here in the northeast, warm, typical summer type conditions, very average temperatures for this time of the year. The western U.S., like I said, much cooler temperatures in Wyoming, Montana, even areas of Colorado. The northern plains, 60s, 70s for highs, even some 50s and some higher elevations. This is probably well above average temperatures for Washington State, Oregon, where certain areas will try to get into the mid to upper 90s in these lower valleys and elevations of Washington State and Oregon. Not quite as hot in the desert Southwest today compared to maybe 2 or 3 days ago, but still warm. But definitely listen to more so your local people in these regions. But going forward, guys, I mean, we basically got a chance of severe storms that will build back into these areas that are very cool today. And so we'll watch the high plains into the central plains for, another round of strong to severe storms in this region. And then we'll even get into our Friday. And, we'll watch a chance for severe storms a little bit further south. Again, kind of the same areas as being impacted today. We don't know quite what's going to happen into the weekend, but I can almost bet someone's going to have a marginal to slight risk. But this is typical summer kind of stuff. I'm not going to try to blow something out of proportion that doesn't need to be. This is really just your typically this time of the year, guys, the jet stream shifts north. It's in the process of already doing so. In fact, here in about a month, it'll start gradually kind of moving back south, a month and a half or so. And then that's when you begin, as you get into late August, to watch for the cold fronts to really start returning. Areas like the Great Lakes begin to start to slowly cool back down. And even here in the southeast, we begin to look for that first cold front of the late summer. But not quite there yet. We still got a while. But, when the jet stream on average shifts further north, that's where the avenue, the road network, kind of the interstate of all the storm systems go. Therefore, you have your worst weather. So, typical summer type stuff. Thank y'all for the support. I'm not sure if we'll have a video tonight. Thank y'all for understanding not making as many videos in the evening. It's just, there's things to talk about, but nothing to really just hammer down over and over and over again. I can cover a lot in these morning videos, but we'll see what happens tonight. God bless all y'all. Have a great day, and I'll talk to you soon.